You're listening to the Talking Headways Podcast Network. This is Talking Headways, a weekly podcast about sustainable transportation and urban design. I'm Jeff Wood. This week we're back at the Mpact Transit Community Conference in Portland, Oregon at the Mpact Innovators Poster Sessions. We talk with young professionals about the transportation implementation and policy work they've been doing in the field. Stay with us. Today's podcast is brought to you by our super wonderful, terrific, stupendous Patreon supporters. We appreciate you all keeping this show and Mondays at the Overhead Wire going. To join this merry band of city aficionados and transportation savants, go to patreon.com/theoverheadwire. $2 a month could get you some stickers and a handwritten note sent with a cool train station stamp. $10 a month gets you one of our transportation scars. And if you just want to give a single dollar a month, you'll be able to get a podcast feed with 0 outside ads or podcasts. We'll leave information in the show notes about how to do it. We've also got some bonus material up there, and we'll be posting more soon, so check it out if you haven't already. And speaking of scarves, the heavyweight knit bike scarf is back in stock, and of course, it's getting cold out, so you need one. For you, for your friends, your colleagues, or for the anti-bus activists you just want to frustrate. If you want to get one of the bus or bike scarves or the lightweight bike scarf now, visit theoverheadwire.com or support us on Patreon. And if you want to support the show in other ways, you can buy books from the authors we've chatted with on the podcast at the bookshop site, bookshop.org/shop/theoverheadwire, or find our Cars Are Cholesterol merch at bit.ly/carsarecholesterol. For anything else, including the Town Planning and Practice audiobook, visit theoverheadwire.com and definitely sign up for the almost 20-year-old daily newsletter at theoverheadwire.com, or you can just keep listening and enjoy the show. We appreciate that too. You can find us on Blue Sky, Mastodon, Threads, Instagram, Flickr, YouTube, Substack, and LinkedIn if you want to connect. Usually at the Overhead Wire, but with Flickr, it's Transit Nerds. Some great stuff coming up, so keep on listening and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, so we're back for 2026. And in 2026, for the first episode, we're going to go back in time to 2025. But we're not going to go as a flashback. This is a new episode. But we're chatting with folks at the 2025 Mpact Transit Community Conference in Portland, Oregon. And the young professionals that are going to be on the show with us presented their work at the Mpact Innovators Poster Session. The Innovators is an all-volunteer national networking group that organizes events and networking at the conference each year. Each of the interviews is about 5 minutes, and we have a link to all the posters in the show notes in case you want to follow along with the visuals. I will note that the poster sessions occurred during one of the evening gatherings, so you may hear a little bit of background noise. But there are some pretty cool ideas in here, so hopefully you all stick around and check all 8 of them out. Let's get started. Okay, first up, Cameron Thompson shares his poster, Sisters East Portal Transportation Hub.
My name is Cameron Thompson, and my poster is about the Sisters East Portal Transportation Hub, which is converting an existing highway rest stop in the city of Sisters, Oregon. So adding a bus stop and kind of park and ride to the site. So existing today, there are a couple amenities on the site that are pretty typical to some kind of highway rest stops. It's at the junction of 2 highways in Oregon, east-west highways. And the city of Sisters is really a small town that can get a lot of tourists all at once. And so we're kind of trying to facilitate some of that movement of travel there. And so we took this all the way from the planning stage through design, and then it has recently been constructed. So exciting to take it through the whole kind of planning design elements there. But the planning phase really focused on kind of what elements do you really need on this site? What are some community needs? And so that included a park and ride facility, so adding parking spots, adding a bus pull-through lane, and some parking for the buses as well. And we also looked at kind of phasing this site, seeing what was needed now, today, and then what's needed maybe in 5, 10, 20 years. And so we also looked at some long-term parking and RV parking. This is a very heavily used area for camping as well. And so the planning phase really brought all those elements together and bringing in the park and ride, the bus stops, and then that long-term parking. And then the final design phase really looked at all those and thought of how can we actually build this on the site. And so one key piece, keeping all of the elements that were part of the planning phase. How do we design these to avoid trees? It was really expressed by the community
I noticed here there's a lot of trees in the picture. So
Yes, yes. It used to be owned by the U.S. Forest Service and is recently bought by the City of Sisters. So the whole site is covered in trees. And so we really didn't want to affect the natural scenery of the site as much as possible. And that's kind of a general kind of statement from the City of Sisters, is really keeping that natural feel. So we kept a lot of the existing asphalt loop that's there today as part of the design, and then really kind of made some free-flowing parking spots in kind of a free-flowing loop rather than your typical kind of rectangular-looking parking lot to really avoid those trees. And so that was a lot of back and forth with the city. What trees can we remove? Working with the city there. Another added element that the City of Sisters really wanted to see if we could add was another RV dump station.
RV dump station, what's that?
So that's where RVs who have gone camping can come in and offload their sewage. You pull up, hook up your RV. You pay for it. It's a service that the city provides. So kind of some income for the city. The city has one on the other side of town that can get backed up on like heavily used camping weekends.
Right.
And so a big piece of this was seeing if we could get that added in with the design. That wasn't included in the planning phase. But so we also added that kind of as part of the design, is adding RV pull-through for that RV dump station.
What is something that you learned from this project that you didn't know before? Maybe you learned about the RV dump station. That's new to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely new to me. That was definitely something new of like, how do we get RVs through the site in like an easy manner? But I'd say the biggest piece that I learned was really how to convert like your typical thinking of, oh, I could just plop like whatever your typical street section is in this site, and really thinking of kind of the community needs and wants of shaping this parking lot to fit in with all the trees that are there today. I would say was the biggest kind of piece that I learned, was how to do that, how to make it still work with vehicles still need to be able to actually fit in these parking spots, be able to kind of circulate through the site as well. So that was definitely probably the biggest thing I learned.
Awesome. Well, Cameron, thanks.
Next up, Veronica Mandasari shares her poster, Reimagining Mill Avenue, What Tempe Can Learn from Portland's Walkable Street Design.
My name is Veronica, and I'm a master's student from Arizona State University. I'm doing Master of Urban and Environmental Planning here.
What is your poster about?
So this is about how I reimagine street corridor in Tempe, downtown Tempe, Mill Avenue, if I implement some strategies from Portland. So here I start from how important is the walkability, and I also did some analysis about walkability surface area, and the corridors still, like, they have some areas that are not covered by the transit stops, because we all know that walkability is very highly related to transportation. And then after that, I try to interconnect all the indicators that I generated from this, and I want to focus on these three. And I compare between Portland strategy and Tempe strategy, and here what I found is Portland has a very organized sidewalk division. So they divided the sidewalk into 3 zones. They also have some standard for the crossing spacing. They also have the LPI. It's really nice, the leading pedestrian intervals. So I think Tempe also has to do that. We already have some planning document mentioned about the LPI, but it's not implemented yet. And after that, I did a very quick social media review about what people think when we talk about sidewalk, walkability, pedestrian. They talk about how hot it is in Arizona because it's very hot, and how unsafe is it because there are a lot of cars accidents. So that's why I want to focus on those two, like the shade and the safety management. So when you see here, this is the before after. So before, there is like only a few trees on the downtown. The sitting place also only 1 per corridor, and they have a lot of like on-street parking. So I just wondering how if I implement Portland strategies to here. So I divided the sidewalk zones into 3, and I put some crosswalk there with the LPI standard. I also get rid some of the on-street parking, but it still has the drop-off zone, but the other parking, I just remove it. So this is how it looks.
Hard to see on the audio, but yeah, there's two different street
Right.
cross sections, and to show the difference between the two, before and after in Tempe. So, what was the most interesting thing that you found out by doing this research?
So what I really found that is very interesting is I'm very impressed of like in this very narrow street corridor in Portland, they can still manage it like very wisely and nicely. If you can see here, the sidewalk is like almost similar, the dimension, but how they organize the roadway is totally different. So they put some restriction for cars. We don't do that now, so we still allow the cars can pass on the streetcar tracks. So here, I think some of them are not allowed to do that. So that's why I feel like the LPI also is very interesting. This is like...
So can you remind me what an LPI is again? You said it earlier.
Yeah, it's the leading pedestrian interval. So basically, pedestrian can cross the street like 3 until 7 seconds ahead start before the vehicle.
So with the light changes before for pedestrians first, and then allows cars to go later. They give the pedestrian a 3 to 7 second head start.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
That's interesting.
Because now in Tempe, even the walking sign is already like on. The cars from the right, they can still like turn left immediately.
Yeah, they can hit you faster.
Right. Can you imagine that? So that's
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Next up is Ryan Martin. His poster entitled Wasted Space, Using Parking Lots to Improve Neighborhood Completeness.
My name is Ryan Martin. I'm from Portland, Oregon.
So what's your poster about?
This is my master's thesis where I discuss this idea of the complete neighborhood, and I identify parking lots as a huge opportunity for cities to improve completeness. And
What's completeness?
Completeness would be non-car access to daily essentials.
So like a 15-minute city, 15-minute neighborhood type of thing?
15-minute neighborhood, 20-minute neighborhood, smart growth, new urbanism.
Right.
I think they all are discussing the same thing.
Come to the same conclusion.
Yeah. And so, how do we create a closer proximity of like housing and those essentials? I think parking lots are a big gap. And so Portland removed parking requirements, which kind of frees up this space to be developed into something else. So I measured every single surface parking lot in the city of Portland. Turns out that 20% of the city is off-street parking. And then I measured the capacity for housing on those parking lots. So 30% of parking lots in the city are zoned to allow housing. And 21% of parking lots total have the zoning and physical requirements to develop a building. And if we apply that across the entire city, these parking lots have the capacity to build over 300,000 new homes and double the city's population.
That's awesome. So tell me how you did the data collection and how you pulled all the information together.
Yeah, so by measuring the parking lots, I used QGIS, and I just went through and traced the satellite image and identified all the parking lots by manually scanning. And then I identified 5 case study areas, which I used neighborhood centers, which are something defined by the city of Portland that are concentrations of growth, and in the definition they are complete neighborhoods, so I felt like that was very appropriate. And then I took my 5 case studies and did a 3D model of each of them to just understand the capacity for housing based on the land use laws at the time, and to understand, what portion of parking lots are big enough to create a building.
That's another question I have is how do you figure out which parking lots can actually be developed on, right? There's a zoning aspect of it, but there's also a physical space, or whether a developer would be really interested in doing it or not, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So in Portland, a standard lot size is 50 by 100. So I just went through and said, if this parking lot is at least 50 by 100, that would be feasible to build a building.
So what was your favorite part about putting this together?
I love these two images down here.
You gotta explain them to people in the audio.
So I created this 3D model so that I could visually represent this transformation that I'm describing. If we're going to turn parking lots into housing, I want people to visually understand what that could be like. And so on this poster here, we've got one image of a strip mall. It's like 16 city blocks. 12 of those city blocks are just parking. And so in my proposal image, we break out those 12 city blocks by creating new right-of-ways and filling in those blocks with housing.
That's awesome. And so what do you want to do with this next?
That is a really great question that I'm not entirely sure about. I think I would like to take these diagrams and create more realistic renderings of what's possible. I think the whole thing is like, I'm just trying to show the potential of a place. I don't think it's economically feasible to do what I'm describing, but I want more people to be aware that like we could have this.
Yeah. The thing that came to my mind was also like the heat island effect and like what happens if you redevelop or if you put trees there and things like that. It's really interesting. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the interview.
Next up is Emily D'Antonio. Her poster is entitled TriMet Better Bus, Improving Reliability at Greeley and Going.
My name is Emily D'Antonio, and my poster is about the TriMet Better Bus program and our project at Greeley and Going by the Adidas campus in North Portland.
And so what did you look at, and then what are the results, and what were the interesting parts about this project?
So the way we chose our location was we looked at bus AVL data to figure out which bus routes in the TriMet system were experiencing the most delay as well as the most occurrences of delay, and that's how we came to these two intersections that were by the campus. And so what was causing the delay was the two signals, but then also there's a zipper merge to the north of the north signal. And so what we propose is removing that zipper merge and giving the right lane to the bus to make it a bus-only lane, and then to add a right turn except bus lane right before that signal.
What's been the feedback on the proposal?
So we talked to TriMet, we talked to PBOT, we had all the meetings, and so it should hopefully be implemented. They're going to stripe it. Because I guess another context of the Better Bus project is it's supposed to just be either repurposing land that's in the right-of-way or just restriping, repainting. And so this is just a simple repainting of the lanes to remove the merge.
What was the most interesting thing you learned from doing this project?
Yes, my favorite part about it was I'm a very data nerd, so I do like working with AVL data. I feel like
Can you tell me what AVL stands for?
So AVL is automatic vehicle location data. So we were able to look at like the GPS coordinate of a bus throughout its entire route over a certain period of time, which like is a very daunting data set because there's so many data points. But then it is something that tells you a lot of important information that you can find out.
And so that was my favorite part. That was your favorite part of it. So you're looking forward to using more AVL data to do more research?
Or just like leveraging it. I feel like it is probably something that isn't used as much as could be used, and it is something that most transit agencies do have because they want to know where their buses are. So.
Yeah. I know there's companies out there that are leveraging it, like basically looking at all of the bus routes in a city and then figuring out where the pinch points are. And
which
where
was kind of what this was.
Exactly. So it's really cool to see this. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Next up is Daniel Lambert. His poster is entitled Pathways Transit Assistance Team, PTAT, a trauma-informed alternative to object-oriented security on transit systems.
Daniel Lambert. So my poster deals in discussing the Pathways Transit Assistance Team, my version of a trauma-informed alternative to object-oriented security, especially on transit systems. So the picture here, the graph, the blue line on the graph is TriMet's originating numbers. This is the number of rides that where you step onto the system the very first time and you click your card. This is your originating ride. The orange line, the higher number, is boarding numbers. So this is, you've gotten off that ride and you've gotten back on again. So the idea is you've left the vehicle and you've come back on. And what you'll notice in this line is that the distance between the blue and orange line, around 2019, as one can imagine, it just collapsed, right? Went way down to 2021. But you'll notice that 22, 23, and 24, it really never came back. And this is a big deal. And what I try to tell people, and what's really interesting about it, is a lot of people don't realize that the currency for transit is not the dollar. It's not the Canadian dollar. It's not the yen. Japan is massive in their transit operations. It's trust. Trust is the currency for transit. And what you're seeing here with this line, and the lack of space in these numbers, is a lack of trust in the system. And part of why I say that there is a lack of trust is a failure to recognize human security. We typically send police officers onto the system to secure the system, to get on and make sure the train is okay, to make sure the bus is okay, the platform is okay. What I suggest is we go to human-focused security, which is get on to focus on the person. Hey, this person has been called in on, but let's check on this person. Let's see why there's a problem, and let's focus on that problem. And one of the ways we do this is changing the way we see what we call security officers. Transit has over 500 individuals that deal in this process right now, and instead of just getting yourself a basic security officer to do the job, we instead replace them with EMTs, behavioral health clinicians, and peer mentors. Now, peer mentor is when somebody who has lived in the houselessness or with drug issues or with mental health issues that they've since kind of come to terms with and rose themselves out of. That's what a peer mentor is. And they come on and they can understand the situation that they're talking to this person about. And it is a fascinating program. And Denver has run this kind of program called STAR. Fascinating. The results are online. You can actually look at all the results that they found. San Diego uses the same kind of model where they bring on mental health clinicians and EMTs, and they actually work with these folks and sit down with them. Hey, let's find you a place. Instead of sitting on the bus just back and forth, come with me. Let's get you a place to go. So this is the idea of getting away from what we call crisis intervention team modeling, which is law enforcement focused. Let's get away from that object-oriented security. That is kind of the deal. One of the things you'll notice is the picture of the law enforcement officer. You'll notice that these uniforms here, they don't look like law enforcement officers. And this is a really important deal when you're talking to somebody who's involved in trauma when it comes to law enforcement. They've been constantly arrested. They deal maybe with violence with law enforcement officers. This kind of imagery changes that model a little bit and allows that person to come in contact with this person and actually help them and look like they're there to help. And of course, the color of the poster is purple and kind of a teal color. This is the international color of mental health awareness. And this is the idea is you engross that into the project and you involve that so that people can see you're not law enforcement, you're something else, you're here to help. So that's kind of what I've got.
That's really cool. So what's the most interesting thing that you learned in this process of putting this together?
What's really interesting and I think really frustrating at the same time is the idea that getting the data for all of this has been incredibly time-consuming and difficult to the point that some of the information I needed for this project was unattainable. For instance, EMS calls, fire calls, when it comes to health issues on the trains and on the buses. I can't find that. When we talk about law enforcement on the system, Portland Police Department has done a pretty decent job of getting their information out there, but MCSO, Multnomah County and Sheriff's Office, they don't really have the numbers to show exactly what's been happening on the system. So it has been really difficult to get a data analytics model based around what's going on and actually look at what the problem is to create a better solution. And I think that would be one of the biggest frustrations that I found on the system. And the most surprising is what seems like it should be transparent isn't.
What are the positives that you take out of this?
The positives are the great work that Marcus and Watson and other researchers like that have shown that CIT-based models are not effective and that we have shown a lot of growth in how we can manage mental health issues and the triumvirate of mental health issues, drug usage and houselessness on the system, that there is a way forward that's better than what we have. One of the things I found is if TriMet were to take on a project like this, they would probably save something like $30 million a year. And it's not only good, but it's cost saving. That's what's fascinating.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Next up is Eric Gasper. His poster is entitled Bridgeless to Better Burnside.
My name's Eric Gasper. I'm a student in the Master of Urban and Regional Planning program at Portland State University.
And what's your poster about?
Yeah, so the title is Bridgeless to Better Burnside. This was my master's capstone project. We call it the MERP Workshop. I worked with a team of 5 other students to envision what West Burnside Street in downtown Portland, Oregon could be in the time from 2028 to 2033 when the Burnside Bridge that connects the east and west sides of the street over the Willamette River.
Is that when it's getting refurbished, or?
It's getting a complete teardown and rebuild.
I see.
It's a seismic action.
Yes.
So the plan is for it to be closed 5 years, and that means that a lot of the traffic that comes to what's essentially one of the busiest and most important streets on the west side of the city is going to severely drop. So we talked to a lot of businesses, cultural organizations, and social services in the neighborhoods around the street to see what they were currently concerned about and what they were worried about happening during the reduced traffic. We found that people had a hard time crossing the street from the north to the south side, going, for example, from downtown to what's known as Old Town Chinatown, one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city, both of which have a lot of social services, a lot of low-income people, and a lot of needs that may not be met when there's the confusion of construction added to a really busy street, or when traffic goes down, just a complete change of what they're used to. There was also a concern that the points from east to west along the street, which connect 2 of the biggest tourist draws in the city, which are Paul's Books and Voodoo Donuts, are not very imageable for people wanting to go from one to the other. Essentially, the street right now is a funnel that gets people east and west really quickly. There's not a lot of space for cars, bikes, or other ways of getting through. So what we did was take a look at 30 years of ideas for the street, what people who live and work and need the services in the area had in mind for the street over the next 5 years and beyond, and came up with some plans for how we could activate some of the space that can be reclaimed when there's less traffic, and lanes can be turned into, for example, pocket parks, temporary plazas, addition of bike lanes that connect to what's going to eventually be a park around the central city called the Green Loop.
Yeah, so tell me, what was the most interesting thing that you found out while you were doing this research?
There were a lot of interesting things. I guess I would say the most, to me at least, was that people who live in the neighborhoods, along with people who work for the city, have had dreams for this street and what it could be for decades. And for one reason or another, they have not come to fruition in what is an appreciable way necessarily. It's an important street, but it's still a dangerous street. And it's still a street that doesn't bring people to it for anything besides going through it.
Right. So when the bridge does come down, what do you expect that will happen? Do you think that the city will follow some sort of idea like the one that you have? Or do you think that they'll take a different approach?
Well,
I'm sure you hope they take your approach.
They'll need to do something. That's all I can say for 100% sure, is that there's going to be a lot of space along what's right now an up to 100-foot right-of-way that will be unused. And in one way or another, somebody will want to use that space. I think it would be the best if, the city can take things that people who live and work in the area would like to see there and put it there in a phased approach where, quick and easy things like restriping streets, adding bike lanes painted on, or even just adding some more greenery can prove that maybe in the long term, after the bridge reopens, all the traffic that currently goes through there won't be necessary.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Thank you.
Sure, thanks a lot.
Next up is Jules Plotz. Her poster is entitled Employer-Centered Accessibility Model to Non-Day Shift Work.
I'm Jules Plotz, and I am right now a planning intern at Portland Metro. This project is my thesis, a master's thesis that I did through Portland State University.
Can you tell me a little bit about the poster and what it's telling us?
Yeah, so I was interested in looking at transit accessibility to non-day shift work. So that's a lot of food service or healthcare or transportation and warehousing jobs where shift times don't end or don't start and end at 9 to 5. So
What was the most interesting thing you found out about the data that you collected?
Yeah, so I was more looking at how to actually model accessibility for these jobs, because it's not really done. Like, usually you start with the home location and model outwards to see how many jobs are accessible from a certain location. But I flipped it around and looked at the employment location to see what kinds of populations have access to these employment locations. And so, in a nutshell, I guess the reason for that is that there might be more policy angles there that we're not looking at. Like, it might depend on the clustering of employers. With like food service jobs have a lot of like mismatch in terms of the times that transit runs there. So if there's a clustering of a lot of small employers, the solutions might be different from like a large employer in transportation and warehousing, like an Amazon warehouse, where you might be better to partner with that employer.
And tell me about the data. I mean, you mentioned going from the employment side. I see you use loads data. That's a data set I am familiar with personally as well.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting one because, before 2005 or so, when it first started coming out, there wasn't a lot of the employment data out there that you could map at the block or the census tract level. Like, the block is actually a better size. And so I'm interested in how you used it and how it worked with the idea that you're putting together, because sometimes it can be a little tricky.
Yeah, it's not always the best data set because, especially for larger employers, but it kind of gives us an idea of where things might be. And I usually, with loads data, people use origin destination data. So they're looking at the home and pairing it to where the worker lives and where they work. And I just looked at just the workplace. And that's because if you're looking at that, paired data like that, you're looking at where trips that are actually being made. And there's a bit of a survivorship bias there, where if someone is not able to access a work location at the time that they need it, that's not a job opportunity. So I'm looking at just the employment area and seeing, are these places accessible to Metro's equity focus areas, where Metro has identified equity populations.
So what do you hope comes out of this next?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe some refinement through discussions. It's a lot for one person to model this. And potentially using the model to look at specific areas, because this is just looking at a snapshot. And that's with accessibility model. Even if it's a 24-hour accessibility model, it's still going to be sort of a snapshot. So I'd like to look at certain case studies where there might be a need for shift workers and see what accessibility looks like throughout the day, and maybe ground truth that with actual qualitative data about what are people's shift times and what are the people's needs.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
And finally, Maddie Belden. Her poster is entitled Development and Datasets.
My name is Maddie Belden, she, her pronouns, and I'm a community investment intern with Metro, which is a regional government in Oregon.
Awesome. And then tell me what your poster is about.
Yeah, my poster is about applying a data justice lens to data sets, specifically grant evaluation. And so I'm working with the community investment team at Metro, which is composed of 3 grant programs, brownfield assessments, community placemaking, and 2040 planning and development, and also incorporates economic development that isn't grant-based, and trying to standardize metrics across these 3 grant programs and figuring out how we can match up data evaluation and communication to data justice principles so that our communication and evaluation of grants aren't just done internally, they're also really tied to community and their values.
So when you're putting this together, what kind of research did you do? What was the background that you pulled in to start thinking about this?
Yeah, I first started looking internally at what work had already been done by previous interns in the community investment team at Metro. And one of the things that some of the interns were doing was doing community interviews with some of the grant recipients of the community placemaking grant, and asking these recipients in their own words what the impact of these grant placemaking program activities were, because how the grant program works is that applicants from around the region can apply based on their own placemaking activities that they want to propose around the region. And then if they get it, they get to facilitate the program and report back on what they did with the grant money. And so it's really interesting quotations that this previous intern created with community about what the impacts were in their own words rather than trying to put it in the words of a grant program that's administered by a regional government. So it was really interesting. And then I continued to do research externally after that on what data justice is and how it's applied at other regional governments, if that was a thing, which I wasn't actually seeing. So trying to see how nonprofit organizations apply data justice lenses to their communities and to their work. And then also looking at data justice in terms of big data sets, which is a lot different from the more small data sets that I'm working with here.
So what was your favorite thing about working on this?
My favorite thing has been being able to build relationships with people on this team by asking them more about these individual grant programs, and also being able to connect with some of the previous interns who worked on these projects in the past, of getting grantees information and evaluative information. Just being able to see all the people who have contributed to the work of this team over the past few years and being able to synthesize it together. It's been like a really fun brain exercise of like how these things are all interconnected and how they can all contribute to making the community investment team more equitable.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks for joining us. The Talking Headways podcast is a project of the Overhead Wire and appears first at Streetsblog USA. Thanks to our generous Patreon supporters who support this show and Mondays at the Overhead Wire. You can support the show as always by going to patreon.com/theoverheadwire. Sign up for our almost 20-year-old newsletter as well by visiting theoverheadwire.com, or check out the show notes for merch or other opportunities to connect. Follow along using your podcatcher of choice, but if you can't find it there, you can always find it at its original home at usa.streetsblog.org. We'll see you next time at Talking Headways. Hey everybody, thanks for listening this far past the credits. If you're here, I just want to say thank you to all of our generous Patreon supporters, especially those in our $10 Dallas tier and above. I just want to share their names, first names only, of course. But I figured this is long overdue that I let folks know that their support is much appreciative. Obviously, all the tiers are very appreciative, but this group has gone above and beyond over the years, and I really appreciate that. Andrew, Ben, Derek, Gabrielle, Glenn, Greg, James, Jeremy, Jim, Joseph, Catherine, Mao, Marcus, Matthew, Mike, Nicholas, Oliver, Steve, Abraham, Abby, Ed, and Matthew. We really appreciate you, and just can't say enough about how much the support from you all and everybody else on Patreon has really helped us out. So I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everybody, and yeah, so we'll see you next time.